Well, thank you, John. And Michael, thank you for your engaging presentation. I have the pleasure of introducing a very dynamic speaker, Patty Mohler, who's a licensed mental health counselor, but she's more than that. She's a person who really understands the ins and outs of what it takes to just be a fully functioning individual. I work with Patty through FLA for now several years, and she's always been available to us to take on a new case to support whoever we have in the area where she lives. She works up in Jacksonville Beach, and she graciously accepted an invitation to speak at last year's seminar, which went so well. We asked her back. Actually, no, we didn't have one last year, so she put it on hold and is with us this today. Her bio is on the website, but I wanted to just point out a couple of things that she is a person who just loves working with people. One of her specialty areas is codependence, and she emphasizes the process of healing throughout her work with individuals. Patty is a dynamic speaker. She's done a TED Talk recently on transforming relationships, one word at a time, and I'm hoping she'll share what that word is with us during her presentation. And she's written a book called Restore and Renew, which is how to communicate and connect and celebrate your best self. So she's very much into empowering us to find the best part of us and grow that seed sometimes that is lie dormant within us. So I am going to stop talking now and with great happiness introduce Patty Muller.
Hello, how is everybody? Thank you for hanging in there. It was so nice to hear Michael and have him on. It's always tough to follow somebody that has that much information. I'm excited to be here and share this information with you. I will share a little bit of a slide. I'm always a little leery about sharing slides because I think they can be just kind of off-putting a little bit, so I'll try to do as much as I can. What I would love from all of you is please feel free to ask questions as we go along. Raise a hand, there's the Q&A. I know there's plenty of people monitoring this, so happy to have that happen. I'm gonna quickly switch over to sharing my screen, and I hope my fellow panelists here will make sure that this goes up and that I'm doing what I mean to be doing. Yeah, did that work, guys? Can you see the screen?
Yep, it's on. Thank you, Patty.
That's all I wanted to know. So my talk is about the invitation to change, and I love that. That is how I try to talk about all of my subjects with anybody that has what I call an ick. I don't just call or refer to it as an alcoholic or a drug addict. I really believe that we all have some type of an ick, whether we're workaholic, a busyaholic, an exerciseaholic, a shopaholic. I just affectionately call it an ick. And I think there isn't any one of us that probably don't have one in some form. But one of the things that I love to do is I do call it an invitation to change. And to everybody out in the audience, I am inviting you to come along and change one little thing. Get curious about your own life, the people around you, your relationships. Makes one small change and it can really open up everybody's life. So with that, we will be talking about codependence. But for now, this doesn't want to work. There we go. So my objective for this today is to really increase the understanding of codependency and relationship issues. I want to help everybody out there correct some irrational thinking of codependency. I want to help define what codependency is and to look at some tools and strategies so that we can become aware of ourselves. I'm extremely honest that I am a codependent in recovery. I've probably been in recovery for about 30 years. And I truly believe that once we have quelled or in recovery from any of the icks, Then the next big one is to really tackle is this thing called codependency. I think until we really look at that, we can always be swayed back into alcohol, porn, video games, shopping. So this to me is one of the big ones to be able to really help my clients, to help you totally understand. Some of my little graphics I love here. So you will meet all of my emotional needs. And that is so true. That is one of the great, really, things that I see with my clients is they start to meet somebody, they're newly in recovery, and they just think any one person is going to do that for them. And part of that, most people don't see that as a codependence, but it actually is. Probably one of my favorite, and this probably is so true of everything that we have gone through in this last year. Son, we're stuck. Mind giving us a hand with your homework? Well, he's over watching TV, right? Parents don't want children to fail. They don't want children to fail in their schoolwork, in their relationships, in their sports, and parents can go out of their way to overfunction for a young person so that they actually end up with young people, as I say, having a failure to launch. And I think this is just a great example of that. I love this, the two super women. At some point you realize you really can't save them, right? And that's what we do. And we know that anybody in recovery probably has family members that try to save somebody that is dealing with an addiction of any type. And we can't save people. And most of us probably in the audience know that that is up to us. We have to do our own personal work with people. I encourage each and every one of you that is out there, if you feel like you're dealing with codependence, get together with a therapist, get together with somebody that truly knows the nuances. I think it is probably one of the most difficult things to understand because it has so many nuances and there's so many gray areas. One of mine is that I have a great colleague that knows that I am in recovery from codependence. I believe just like any of the other icks, they doesn't really go away. We learn how to manage it. I learned how to deal with it. I understand it, but I love to call myself out on it. And that's one of the ways to truly heal is when I can call my colleague and go, oh my gosh, my codependence is biting me in the tail. And one of the things that I've learned, and I'd like to pass this along, is having a 24-hour rule. I don't do anything like send a bad email, send that huffy puffy text, make a large purchase without allowing 24 hours to pass. And that allows me to have that time for my emotions to calm down, for me to give it some really thoughtful behavior before something. And I have a great example of my own codependence. One of my colleagues, when I first came out into this business, had sent me an email and asked me to head up this program. And she thought it was terrific. And it was with kids. I don't work with children. I'm not specialized in children. This person was a mentor to me. This person was a dear friend to me. This person had helped bring me into this business. So all of my people pleasing, all of my codependence came roaring up. And so I wrote a simple email about that long, explaining all the reasons I couldn't do this program. And then I called my colleague and I said, oh, codependency biting me in the tail. And she said, please tell me you're waiting your 24 hours. Yes, I am waiting my 24 hours. And I did. Reread that really long email and then simply wrote, dear so-and-so, appreciate the consideration. It's not anything I'm interested in at this time. Patty, done. Just a simple no. It was easy. Hit send. Do you know what response I got back? Yeah, Patty, I didn't think that was yours. I just thought I'd toss it your way because it came across my desk. That was like, oh my gosh, I have wasted 24 hours of my precious brain time worrying about offending somebody when a simple no would have done the trick. learning how to say no. And if you can't say no to somebody about certain things, that is definitely a symptom of codependence. I love when this thing won't turn here. So what is codependence? In a nutshell, oops, let me go back, that flipped. In a nutshell, codependency is about over-functioning in someone else's life and under-functioning in your own. It means that you're centering your life around somebody else's life and not taking care of your own. And I think this is so important to really understand. And one of the questions I always ask myself about my friends, about my family, is can that person do that themselves? Do they need my assistance with that? If the answer is no, then I've learned to let it go. Please notice that I said I've learned to let it go. That has not always been the case. Was raised in an alcoholic family. And one of the things that came out of that is I became a great people pleaser. I wanted everybody to be happy and I wanted to keep peace in the family. My parents were divorced, so I wanted to make sure that the two parents could talk. They didn't talk for some 35 years, literally, ever. But I wanted to make sure there was always peace, and I was never going to give anybody a reason to be unhappy or have discord with the other one. How did mine manifest? Mine didn't manifest into being an alcoholic. Mine managed itself into becoming a food addict. And I was a bulimic for over 25, 30 years. Long before we had the term bulimia, we only had anorexia. So I was dumped into a sea of figuring out how to heal myself without any help because there weren't any terms for what I had. So it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that a girlfriend called me and said, well, we were having a conversation, and she said, but you know you're one. I said, no, I'm one what? And she said, an adult child of an alcoholic. Well, I had never heard this term. And that's what got my curiosity up. That's what helped me decide that I wanted to heal myself, heal my own addiction, see my food as an addiction, that it's ever bit as terrifying, scary, life-threatening as any of the other icks. And so I had to learn how to manage my own life. And I don't think it was truly until I had my own son that I learned how much I wanted to please. It can be simple things like asking somebody 50 million times at the dinner table, do you want more? Do you want seconds? Can I get you more? Do you need more? Can I get that for you? Can I get that for you? If anybody wanted seconds, that bowl's on the table, they can reach forward and get it. That sounds minute, and it probably is, but around healthy people, it's extremely annoying. So that's one of the things. Over functioning in someone else, one life. One thing that I really wanted to touch base on is being a codependent does not mean that you had to come out of a home where there were substances. And I think that's one of the real myths that I want to dispel today is when we come out of many different types of homes, we find that we're in codependent. And I wanted to give you some examples. There is obviously the one of a children of alcoholics, of an addict. And so that just like me, it created, I wanted to keep peace in the family. That's one example. Here's one that most people don't think about. But let's say you went to first grade and Mrs. Watson wanted you to be able to clean the whiteboards. And so you cleaned the whiteboards and she gave you great praise. You might come out of a home where you don't get much praise, where you weren't very well nurtured. And Mrs. Watson recognizing that washing that whiteboard was the best thing ever. So you might show up tomorrow. And so you show up tomorrow and you do that whiteboard again and you get that praise, and man, it feels good. You're getting pats on the back, and that's the nurturing you need. That might follow you through school, and you might learn that if I'm a people pleaser, if I please Mrs. Watson and then I go to Mr. Gregory and then I go to Mr. Smith in the 5th grade, and people recognize that I want to do things and that I'm willing to do things, that is actually the beginning of a codependent relationship, because I need outside approval. The approval of myself doesn't come from within, it comes from without, outside. Rejections by parents, siblings, and nurturers. So if I'm constantly, as a small child, asking for somebody to pick me up and I constantly get turned away, or if I'm left in my crib, that also can be one of the roots, as I call, of codependence, that people are striving to find people that will recognize them, hold them, nurture them. I had a great case a number of years ago where the adult daughter, was a codependent, and she came to work on her issues. And we went back and looked at it was like during her childhood. There was not an addiction in her family. What she did have is a sibling that wasn't very well behaved. And the sibling would just kind of go off the rails every now and then and got into quite a bit of trouble, sneaking out of the home, not getting good grades, just wasn't behaving well. Well, all the attention got onto that young sibling. The person I was working with was a little bit ignored. Here's one story she told me, and I found it fascinating. When mom would be angry at the sibling that was misbehaving, the two of them in a bedroom scenario where there were 3 doors would take to their rooms, slam the rooms, go into the room. My client did not like the discomfort of there being unsettledness in the house, of strong language in the house, of yelling in the house. What did my client do? My client would go and take a note paper and slide it under the door of mom with, "Won't you please talk to my sister? She's really sorry." Then she would slide a note underneath the sibling. "Mom didn't mean that. Mom didn't mean to yell at you. Won't you come out and talk to her?" She became the caretaker and the person to try to bring these two together. And she did that with every relationship she had. She did that in her marriages. She did that in her own life. And we worked a long time for her to understand she only needed to be responsible for herself. Favoritism of a sibling. If there's one sibling that's the outstanding student or the outstanding athlete, that person, the other siblings might feel ignored, feel like they're not getting enough attention. And that also can lead to some codependency. Neglect. Neglect is one of the ones when we have young children that have not been fed. We're seeing it today that recently, yesterday, I had somebody come in, and due to the way of the world and COVID, and unfortunately parents, many of you are at home dealing with children, the easy thing to do right now at summertime is often to have children watch video games. This 10-year-old is watching video games from 8 a.m. to 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night every single day because both parents are working and they don't have time. This is creating an ick. It's a process addiction, but this will be a young person that will struggle with learning how to negotiate the world without any type of electronics. What do I mean by overfunctioning in someone else's life? Let's talk about giving. Giving is giving that gift. Let's say somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Susie's birthday party is this week. But we've decided we're not going to give any gifts." And everybody's like, "Perfect, that's great. We'll get together, we'll have pizza, that'll be wonderful." That codependent is not going to like that scenario. They like feeling good about themselves and having that adoration that their gift is the best. That person might very well show up with a gift and be the only one there, but it might feel very good for them. And so they'll do giving when it's not necessary to give. Giving is another example. If somebody is on a budget, let's say my family has decided that for gift giving, we're only going to do $50 for whoever's birthday, bar mitzvah, Christmas gift comes up. Uh-oh, but now it's my nephew's bar mitzvah. I don't want to give a $50 gift. So I might go spend $500 or $200 on a gift, and I might be willing to risk my spouse being very angry at me about going over the budget, but my codependence won't allow me to maintain a boundary. Boundaries are very important when we're talking about codependence. Fixing. All of you know this. When you're speaking to your partners or your spouses or a friend, sometimes you just want to vent, right? You just want to be able to tell your story, get it off your chest, and move on. But then you normally get the old, well, let me fix this for you. Let me screw drive that in. Let me call your boss for you. I had to learn with my son this one. He had a Fulbright scholarship playing basketball and had unfortunately broken his foot. And so one day I was calling him and I said, "Are you wearing your boot?" And you could hear the dead silence. And I said, "Wow, can I wind that back?" And I said, "I have a feeling the 4 coaches, 5 trainers, and 2 surgeons probably are taking care of you, and you're smart and intelligent." And he said, "I'm glad you recognize that." And we affectionately nicknamed my codependence with him, because I definitely have it, I own it, mom mode. And so when I want mom mode, when I want to chime in for this beautiful, bright 29-year-old, I will say, "Can I have a mom mode minute?" And he'll say, "Go ahead, you're on the clock. You have literally 60 seconds. And he'll hold me to it so I can say what I want to say. Or every now and then, if I overstep my own boundaries, he'll say to me, "In mom mode?" And I'll just be like, "Oh man, time out," and I'll back myself up. So finding humor, you guys, finding humor is a way to deal with your codependency once you can identify it, once you've really worked on it. It's always going to sneak in there and grab us, but humor is a wonderful way to handle it. Helping when you don't need to be helped. I was recently with somebody and they wanted to take things out of my hand. I didn't need things to be taken out of my hand. So I clearly recognize that somebody is being kind. And that's a really fine line about somebody being kind and somebody over functioning in somebody's life. Thinking for others. How many times have you been with a friend or a colleague or partners and they're like, "Well, what they're really trying to say, well, let me tell you what they're saying." And so that codependence, when it comes out that we want to speak for somebody else, is a symptom of codependence. Taking over. When somebody's setting the table and doing a fine job, but you have to come in and go behind it and straighten it out and make sure the forks are in the right place. It has to be perfected to your standards. That can be a symptom as well. Controlling. Controlling is probably one of the most identifiable symptoms of codependence, is that you could try to control every scenario. As attorneys, this is very true because it works in your profession. It's extremely good that you can control the way things are being handled in your office and getting certain documents taken care of and talking to certain people. But when it's outside of your workforce and you're not willing to do it and you're over controlling in your entire family, that can become a problem. And doing for others what others could be doing for themselves. I've worked with a lot of attorneys. I just did a worldwide women's summit of attorneys. And it was fascinating to have them come on. And I love that they really talked about decision fatigue. Have you ever heard of that term? I love it. It's decision fatigue. And you as attorneys make decisions all day long about things that you need to do, about your schedules, about people's lives. All day long, you make decisions. So sometimes when you get home, you are exhausted. So when your partner says to you, "What do you want on your pizza?" You go, "I don't know." "Well, where do you want to go to dinner?" "I don't know." There's so much fatigue with being an attorney that sometimes you are struggling with making really solid decisions. Many of the women on this panel, when I did this global summit, talked about that they had raised children that were failing to launch due to the fact that once they came home from being an attorney, they never made that switch, and they controlled everything within their children's lives. They didn't want them to fold the laundry because it wasn't done correctly. They didn't want them to set the table because it wasn't done correctly. And so sometimes codependence will create more codependent because it is generational. And so part of it is I love that sentence, try not to do for others what they can do for themselves. Under functioning in your own life. And what does that mean? When you're under functioning in your own life, it means that you don't take care of yourself. A lot of times attorneys, professional people will come in and talk to me and I'll say, when's the last time you did something nice for yourself? Oh, I don't remember. When did you go for a pedicure? I don't know. When's the last time you went fishing? Can't remember. When's the last time you just took a walk with your partner and said, come on, honey, I want to go? Don't remember. So when you neglect your relationships with either your partner, your spouse, your wife, your husband, your children, that is not part of self-care. Self-care also, I want to make sure I say this, doesn't have to cost anything. It can be just turning off all the technology and being with somebody and being in the moment with somebody. Failing to consider yourself in your decisions and your planning. That's so true of so many people that if you're talking about taking a vacation and you're going to go skiing, but you hate to ski, you don't like being cold, you have a bad knee, you don't want to go, but you won't say anything. You won't say something like, hey, could we compromise a little bit on this, that we go skiing for 5 days and then maybe for 3, we kind of do an in-town thing where I can do some activities. When you fail to speak up and take care of your own needs. Development of physical or psychological problems, including anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression don't often get talked about when we're talking about codependency, but it is one of the big ones. We get so anxious about people pleasing and make everybody happy and making all the decisions, and perfectionism, it doesn't exist. And I know that you all are in a field that desires and demands that you have perfectionism. And so it's a struggle on how to turn it off in your professional life and turn it off into your personal life. One of the things I try to help all of my clients understand is strive for excellence, but not perfectionism. Perfectionism is a jail. It always produces anxiety. It will produce depression because you feel like you've never been successful throughout your day. So strive for excellence, not perfection. It's also often, the development of ethical and legal problems, including lying, misrepresentation, and bankruptcy. And that's many reasons that people come to talk to me, is how to deal with some of those things. Those are the underlying causes. And again, I think any of the icks are just the Band-Aids. And once we get down to this codependency and dealing with some of these other issues, people learning to take care of themselves and have self-care, we can also help eradicate some of our addictions. Recovery is about developing a healthy self. When people come into my office, oftentimes they'll sit down and say, Patty, I have absolutely no idea who I am. That is my one thing that I'll know that I will be discussing codependency, when we've lost ourselves, when we don't know who we are from our inside out, when we don't know whether we like skiing or fishing or sitting out on the beach or want to move. It just means that we've invested so much of our time into somebody else's life. Ways to think about yourself in relationships. One of the things I love to talk about is boundaries. I wish I could see a show of hands. Tell me, there are 4 pictures up on this screen. Can you identify the healthiest boundary? I know that one's going to be tough because I can't ask you, but here it goes. It's actually the bottom left, the one in the green. Oh, I see some heads kind of going, what? That's crazy. Didn't know that. So let's go through these. Top left, That's actually barbed wire. And that's that person that you can't really get to know. They're very well protected. Maybe you walk into the lunchroom and you say, "Hey, John, how are you?" "Good." "How was your weekend?" "Good." "What'd you do?" "Nothing." And it just feels prickly. They're just not going to let you in. And we all know that. I worked at an agency once, and there was somebody there for 10 years. Nobody knew if this person was married, had children. They just had barbed wire all over. You just weren't getting to know them. Great colleague, but they weren't ever going to let us know them personally. The one on the top on the right, that's actually that person that has a wall around them. Takes a very long time. You can get through them. The bricks are about 40 layers deep and about 5 miles high. You can get to know this person. It's just going to take a while. It's going to feel like you get a little bit of information, take a brick out, you get a little bit more of an information, but that's going to be a long growing, and they're probably not going to really want you in. The bottom right, the purple where it's jagged, that is the most harmful type of boundary to have. And that's where I see a majority of people. And the reason being, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this means that you have a strong boundary and you're going to stick to it. And then this one, you're going to let somebody slide in and harm you. This one's a firm boundary. This time you soften up. Let me use the example of somebody who maybe has an addiction. And let's say this is a dad, since it looks like a male. Let's say that's a dad, and dad has said, "You are welcome to come to the house anytime you want, as long as you are in recovery and you're not using heroin." So dad clearly understands, "No, you can't come to the house. I'll come meet you and I will be on your turf. I'll have a conversation, but you're not allowed into the house." Now Thanksgiving comes and he feels really bad. He knows his son's still using heroin, but he lets him in. And now Thanksgiving is absolutely a nightmare. He shows up high, there are fights, it's not good. And he's realized he's not enforced his own boundary. So next time it's like, "No, you can't come in." Then the next time it's like, "Oh, it's your birthday." "Yeah, okay." Another argument ensues. So this person will quickly the dad will either learn to come over here and just be really consistent. If you're in recovery, you're welcome to come in. If you're not in recovery, you're not welcome to come home. If you're in recovery, yes, you can come home, or whatever scenario there is. But the boundary is extremely consistent. I use my own boundary of time as an example of that. If you were a client of mine or a friend of mine, because I believe time is about respect, I am not late. If your appointment is at 2 o'clock, unless there's some major crisis in my office, I'm gathering you up at 2 o'clock. It might be 2:01, might be 2:02. If it's hit 2:05, there's a problem, and they will come knock on my door like, "Is there a problem?" Because I'm so consistent. If they show up at 20 minutes past 2 o'clock, my clients know I'm not going 20 minutes later after their appointment. I'm going to hold time for my next client. So my consistency helps my clients feel secure because it's consistent. They know I'm dependable, which makes them feel secure. And they know exactly how I operate. They know that if they show up, I had a client the other night at 6 o'clock, it was their appointment. And they showed up at 1:02 and said, "I know I'm going to be out of here at 6 o'clock, correct?" And I said, "Correct." And they said, "But I just wanted you to know I tried really hard to get here." Perfect. But I had another client at 6 o'clock, so I couldn't take them. But they already knew the rules, they knew the consistency, and that helps them tremendously. I want to show how this works if you're going off to rehab for any type of addiction, process addiction, substance addiction. This is a family of 4. And what I call everybody has a dance. Everybody know how everybody's going to act. So I'm going to make this a dad. I'm not trying to be gender here. I'm just choosing something that I can demonstrate. So if this is a family and this is the dad and this is an alcoholic, everybody in this family knows how to act. Come 5 o'clock, these two children are going to go into their bedroom because they're really not sure what kind of person dad's going to come home. Is dad going to come home as somebody who was drinking in the afternoon? Is dad going to come home pleasant, or is dad going to come home in a rage? So they just know if we're doing our homework and we can kind of hide, that's okay. This will be mom, and mom here, pardon me, mom here knows that he wants dinner at 6 o'clock. That's one of his things. And she doesn't want to upset the apple cart. So she's going to go along with that. So she's cooking and chopping. Finally gets to that point where this family understands that the dad needs to go to rehab. He does do that and has a very successful time while he is at rehab. And he's gone for about 6 to 8 weeks and then comes home. So he's changed shape. So I'll go back. So he's gone from this shape to here, changing shape because he's learned a lot. He's learned about codependence. He's in recovery. He's going to AA. He's got a sponsor. He has a therapist. He's doing all the right things, but he comes home. What happens right here and right here? And it's going to keep going. I know none of you can answer, so I will for you. There's going to be a little bit of friction. And this family's going to have to learn to change. So in 2018, as a licensed mental health therapist, we, by our ethics, are supposed to have a client and deal with that client. And in 2018, I realized I wasn't being as successful as I wanted to be as a therapist, helping my clients in recovery. And so I changed my rules a little bit. Now it's important that I invite the family members to come in and have a conversation with me. Sorry about that. So what I ask them to do, not to be my clients, but I want to bring them in and talk to them about recovery, what they need to do, how to learn about codependence. If I can't have the family, if these other family members don't change, more than likely this person in recovery is going to relapse. We need the entire system to change in order for the person in recovery to be successful. So enmeshment, relationships. This is a couple that just doesn't move without the other one. They do everything together. They make every decision together. There's just no individuality. Oftentimes with codependence, it can feel uncomfortable. So you have self and another. This is a great example when I see somebody that has an addiction who has not worked on their codependence and is really trying to control their young adult. This is an example of this young adult might go off to a college 3,000 miles away from home. They won't just go an hour away where they can flip home, have Sunday night dinners. They want so far out of the family with an addiction that they will alienate themselves. This is the healthiest of relationships, whether this is two partners, two girlfriends, two guy friends. You each have your own individual things. Maybe this person is into the book club and to kayaking and to sewing. And maybe this person is into golf, loves video games. Give me another one. Loves stargazing. I don't know where I came up with that one, but there it is. That's healthy. They each have their individual relationships. Then right in the middle, this is where it's healthy because this is where they do things together. This is where they both like to go bike riding. They both like to cook a great meal. They both like to entertain in the house. So there's some commonality, but they haven't given up their individual relationships with themselves or others. So that's pretty much codependence in a relationship. One of the things that I want you to think about, and I have my information up here, but I have 10 questions to kind of hone in for you. So you might want to listen to these and just put a yay or a nay. It's listed 1 through 10. Do you avoid confrontation? Is that a yes or a no for you? Do you neglect your needs to attend to others first? In other words, if you're hungry and starved, will you feed everybody else and forget to eat that night, or a similar situation? Do you accept verbal or physical abuse by others? Do you take responsibility for the actions of others? In other words, even if your 17 or 18-year-old does something and they're old enough to know better, do you take full responsibility? That's part of being codependent. Do you feel shame when others make mistakes? Do you do more than your share of work at home or in organizations? I love the fact that Michael talked about being busy and about those really long days. Those of you that think that you have to work 16 hours a day, that's being codependent because you feel like that's the only way you can succeed. And that would be something that we would really work on if we were working together. Do you ask for help? Oh, all of you that are out there know that asking for help is the hardest thing a human can do. And that's any of us. Just whether it's help, I need my garbage being taken out, or help, I just need somebody to listen to me. I think it's the hardest thing for anybody that has an addiction to be able to pick up that phone and say to their sponsor, I'm struggling today. Or call their wife and say, it's not a good day. My cravings are at the max and I'm really feeling I just need to be here on the phone. Hardest thing to do. Hardest thing for me to do is to pick up the phone and call my colleague and say, oh, my codependency is gonna get me on this one. Admitting that we need help, asking for help, it's probably one of the hardest things we as human beings have to do. Do you need others' validation to feel good about yourself? Do you think everyone's feelings are more important than your own? Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth is that we feel so responsible if somebody's upset. Saying a simple statement, and I know that I was asked to talk about the one-word exchange. One of them is using I instead of you. And I try to start every sentence with the word I feel. And if I say to somebody, I'm sad to feel, see how the treatment of others, or I'm sad to feel something, that's when it's okay to state my feelings and I can never be wrong. When I start a sentence with the word you're hurting my feelings and you're doing this, I'm going to create an argument because you is the number one word that creates defensiveness and we feel we need to defend ourselves. So if you're going to take one thing away from today is learning to start each one of your sentences with your clients, with your children, with your spouse. Start your sentences with I, and it comes from a total different place and you get a total different connection with people. And do you suffer from low self-esteem? And that was one of the things that I really had to come to grips with myself, is learning about self-esteem and how that is a major component of codependence, because we are such people pleasers. We do rationalize, we do justify. And so I'm hoping today that you just got a real big umbrella about what codependence is. Love, love, love if you guys would ask any questions, because I'm more than happy to take them at this time.
Thank you so much for that great presentation, Patty. So the floor is open. Let's see, do we have any questions for Patty? You can raise hand.
Oh, now come on, guys, don't be shy now. You got me.
Exactly. Michael Stover has raised a hand. Can we get Michael vocal on? There you go. Michael, I think if you unmute, you'll be able to speak up.
On 1 second. Patty, first and foremost, thank you so much for the presentation. On top of being undereducated about most things, this was certainly something that I hadn't explored deeply, and I'm thankful for another opportunity to delve farther into the idea of codependence. One of the things that is I guess, concerning and equally not concerning from your presentation, it seems while behaviorally, we can do a lot to address the idea of codependence. It's a situation by situation basis that you're working or reworking how you're trying to get through your relationship struggles, for example, having 3 kids in those moments. Would you agree with that?
100%. Thank you. Yeah, this was an overview, and I'm hoping everybody takes it as an overview. That's why I
Yes,
really
ma'am.
recommend working with a therapist, because I think it has so many nuances. Somebody will come into me, Michael, and go, "Oh my gosh, I think this is codependence." And I'll say, "Do you think it is?" And they'll go, "No." And I go, "Right, it's not." Like, I want people to start to think. If you've
Sure.
over functioning in somebody's life, you know, when my son's such a great example of that. Me trying to monitor at his age whether he was in a boot or not was me trying
Sure.
to be controlling. So
Yes,
for
ma'am.
me, it is individual. To me, when I have parents that come in and their children are 12 and 14 and 16, and they don't know how to take care of their finances, they're not doing laundry, they don't know how to cook, we have codependence happening.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so to me, it's how do we get kids to launch on schedule? So I agree with you 100% that it is situation by situation. And I have to sit back myself and go, am I over functioning? Do I need
Sure.
outside applause, or am I being kind? And I'll go through mine. And if I'm being kind, then I allow myself to be kind.
Sure.
Thank you
Well,
for
I
your
greatly appreciate it, and I'll look forward to reaching out to you in the near future. Thank you again. It was wonderful.
Thank you. One of the things I really want everybody to know too is I don't think codependence just has to do with somebody that has an addiction. There are not too many functioning families. We all have some type of dysfunction going on. So my colleague and I wrote a book called The Shift, Codependency from Codependency to Independency. And so I try to look at it through relationship eyes, not just through an addiction eyes. So if anybody's interested in that, reach out, be happy to share that with you, because I think it truly is relational, not just needs to be deemed into the addictive world as well. Anyone else?
Patty, someone asked anonymously, they said, I'm probably the person with the barbed wire around me.
Okay.
What are some ways I can take them down?
Well, kudos to you for even recognizing that. You know, to me, number one is being aware that that's even who you are. And so it's to find who's safe in your world. And maybe it's a girlfriend, maybe it's a guy, and just start trying in little tiny tidbits to open up. My next one would be, if you know you're that person with the barbed wire, it's not to ask, why am I like this? That's a judgment question. That's also on my TED Talk, is never to ask a why question. What led me to be here? What leads me to have barbed wire? Oh my gosh, I was neglected, and then I was abused, and then I was in an abusive relationship. Yeah, you would have barbed wire around you. So kudos to you for recognizing that there might be barbed wire. I would encourage you really to work with a therapist that can really, if you go back to that wire, is kind of take it out one little bit and one little piece at a time, because it's just going to take work. But the fact that you even recognize that, you're well on your way. I hope that helped.
Excellent. All right, Patty, someone also asked where they can get the 10 questions from.
Is it possible that I shoot these over to Dr. Weinstein and he can get them out?
Absolutely.
I'm getting a nod. So yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. You got 2 thumbs up for a wonderful presentation. You need to know that. And we got 2 people who want to ask you final questions if we have time. Michael Cohen?
Yes. How do you tell people no when you really want to help them, and you probably can, but they're not paying for it, and it's going to be a lot of extra work, and you still want to keep the relationship with the client or with the friend?
I want to make sure I understand your question. How do you get the help? Is that the question?
No. How
Okay.
do you tell people no when they ask you to do extra work for free and you don't want to hurt the relationship with your client?
How do you do extra work when they want it for free and you don't want to hurt the relationship with your client? Did I get that correct?
Yes, how do you just tell them no?
Great question, right? So one of the things I always do is say validate somebody. Validate the person that you're talking with. If it was a client, it would go something like this. Thank you so much for considering and asking me this question. And then depending on your time, I'd be able to say, there are a certain amount of pro bono clients that I have within this year. And at this moment, I don't have that free time. If I come up with a space and time that I can do that, I will let you know. And I certainly appreciate you understanding that.
And the last request, can you put your contact stuff back up for another moment or two? People didn't have a chance to jot it all down.
Ta-da.
There you go. I don't think we have any more. Another thank you. And as we say goodbye, oh, there you go. Title of the book. It's all up there. Patty, thank you so much. It was a
Thank you,
wonderfully
guys.
received and a very, very informational hour with you. I wish we had more.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All of you take care, keep reaching out, help one another, be supportive, be kind. Thank you all very much. Mind your health.